Hi there, my name's Eric, and because of our current health crisis situation, there's a lot of us teachers, especially higher education teachers, that are going to be moving online for the first time this semester. So, as someone that thinks about this a lot, I thought it might be helpful to get some of my thoughts and experience out there into the world to maybe help some of you who are looking to feel a little bit more comfortable about teaching through online means. I'd like to share a little bit about tools and tips and theories and concepts in general about educational technology and learning concepts about teaching and learning online. Today, I'd like to talk about a very essential topic or concept related to online learning, and that is the idea of synchronous versus asynchronous online learning. A lot of classroom teachers out there are very familiar with the concept of lecturing and then giving homework, right? So the idea of synchronous versus asynchronous online learning won't be new to you, but there are some different ways that this plays out when you're conducting classes online or even in some sort of blended learning environment where you're teaching sometimes online and sometimes in a face-to-face situation. So what are these concepts? What does it mean for online learning? What are some of the things that go into the thought processes of designing learning concepts for these situations where we're doing things synchronously and asynchronously? Right? So let's think about synchronous online learning, right? So doing things at the same time at the same place. So if you're a classroom teacher, you might have a scheduled class. If you're a higher ed teacher, you have a scheduled test this time of week. In this classroom, everyone gets together, you lecture, you discuss, you have activities. That is synchronous learning. And online happens basically the same place, only the same way, only it doesn't happen in a classroom, right? It happens someplace in some form online. It's scheduled. So sometime a week or every day, everyone has that scheduled time to spend together at the same time using the same online medium. That could take many different forms. So it's a lot like watching a scheduled program on TV versus on YouTube when you can watch it whenever you want, which is asynchronous. So when we think about asynchronous learning, you're putting information out there to be consumed at the the content receiver's will. So anytime that they want to read something, they'll read it. Anytime they want to view something, they'll view it. Anytime they want to answer a question, they will answer it. So this happens at the student's schedule. They have a lot more autonomy when it comes to doing these types of things. So if you're a classroom teacher, you give a bit of a homework, and students have their ability to do that homework on the train, before bed, anytime they want, before breakfast, right? So the same thing happens online. What's different is that a lot of the things you do synchronously in class can now be done asynchronously online. So if you're a lecturer and you like to lecture to students, you have a lot of information you want to get across from you to a lot of the students. This doesn't have to be synchronously as it would be in a classroom. It could be done asynchronously through video. You can record your lecture and let students asynchronously, whenever they want, consume that video content. Right. So, what does this look like in action, right? So, synchronously and asynchronously, we have a set of tools and resources that we can look at for both of these scenarios. And they're interchangeable. Some tools you can use for synchronous and asynchronous type of learning. Some of the popular synchronous ones are video conferencing, things like Skype, Google Hangouts, Zoom, where we all get together and do a face-to-face through video, um, talking, chatting, looking at each other's faces through the internet. Um, that's very popular, especially with smaller classes. You can talk to students, you can lecture them, you can coach them. You have all the flexibility that you, or most of the flexibility that you do teaching face to face in the classroom, but with a couple of technical drawbacks, right? All right, we also have the live chatting. So if you're on the go and you don't have the ability to do streaming and talking to a camera, a lot of things happen just by chatting. So you're in a line group, everyone decides to get on the chat, get on Twitter. There's these live tweets, chat situations that happen a lot where people get on at a specific time and send text messages back and forth to each other. And that's one way to do a synchronous type of a lesson at the same time. Another one is just live streaming. So everyone knows to get on YouTube, to get on their LMS or any situation, and you are going to speak at people or show videos to people. And live streaming, sometimes yes, sometimes not, is only available during that time. So students know they have to come on and watch some sort of streaming video or streaming lecture at a given time. One thing that I'm very passionate about is virtual reality, and this can be a very engaging form of synchronous online learning. Is when you all hop in to a virtual environment together. This could be a game, this could be a virtual reality social platform, and you interact through virtual avatars in a virtual world, right? So you're in a real world, but you put on maybe a headset, like I have one right here actually, something that looks like this, and you step into a virtual world and you become an avatar and you interact with other avatars. Might even look like a virtual classroom, something like that. Asynchronously, things that happen at the student's leisure, at their own time. You can have message boards, discussion boards. So you type in a topic of a discussion, and students roll that discussion along with messages, usually text messages, sometimes video messages. You can also do this in a video message as well. Someone posts a video, and someone has a question about that or adds bits of pieces to that discussion, and it becomes a running list of a discussion on a message board online somewhere. Google Groups is popular for this. Kielo is for debate online. It's very popular. Another thing that I do a lot personally, is having students create things online for specific classes. And so this is great for coursework. So if you have a course that has a lot of different assignments, a lot of readings, a lot of producing of things, maybe projects, papers, presentations, essays, what have you, an online portfolio, some sort of website online where a central place where students know to put all of their things for review. It can be quite empowering for students because everything's all in one place. You as a teacher can go and find their information all at one place for review, and students find, in my experience, that being able to reshare their work, their projects, their initiatives, their work that's already online with potential employers, with other teachers, with fellow students, can be a very good draw as well. You can assign readings and record for asynchronous learning as well. So, like I said before, if you want to lecture to students, you don't have to have everybody together at the same time. Students can do that lecture at the same time. Now, most online teachers don't stick to one tool, and a lot of these tools are integrated with what's called an LMS, a learning management system, which is basically a website that lets teachers add different tools, different links, different websites together to form a cohesive course through content. So, at any given time, you may find yourself on one or end of the spectrum for different kinds of courses and the others for different times in the course. So if you're a language teacher, you might want to do more synchronous learning because you need students to practice that face to face, just in time conversation skills. If you're an economics teacher, you might do more asynchronous because the content it might be a little more dense and you want to be able to let students rewatch and rewatch again content that you deliver to them, review it again, and spend more time trying to produce or reproduce simulations or problems that you present to them. You might want to do asynchronous. But I find that it's best to kind of mix between these things, right? One situation might be where you have an asynchronous situation where you're lecturing, you're putting stuff out there for students to consume, videos and readings and assignments, but students might have a particular problem or a question. So then you can schedule a synchronous help session or help desk or review time sometime in the semester. So 2 or 3 times a semester, maybe even just for a short time every week, you could have that time where everyone gets together and students can voluntarily show up to get some face-to-face interaction with you, and you can kind of judge how the content is being perceived. Because there's what we're going to get into just now is there's the big advantages and disadvantages to delivering content in these ways when we design for online delivery. Right? So let's talk about that. So the advantages of these situations. So in learning through online means, you have a big difference of engagement, motivation. For example, most MOOCs, massive online open courses, have only about a 1 to 2% completion ratio, meaning if 1,000 students sign up for a course online, one or two of them or a handful of them will actually finish the course. When it's a synchronous environment, especially in the classroom, you can have a very dynamic, immersive feel. I say I laugh at immersive because that's what I talk about for online virtual worlds as well, right? It's so dealing with humans, you have that face-to-face contact, you have that immediate reaction, you build rapport, you have better engagement, better motivation, many times in getting your students or your learners engaged in the content. That depends on how you do it, though. So if you're lecturing and you're just showing slides and you don't see your face, the engagement sometimes goes way down very quickly because students will, you know how students are, right? Sometimes they wander off in the middle of a lecture face-to-face in class. That will be exacerbated online because they have their phone ringing on their desk. There's someone maybe talking behind them at the Starbucks. And now you're not only competing with the millions of things that students have in their heads, but all the things going on around them that only they are seeing. So how you design your synchronous lesson is also very important too. Maybe we'll get into that in a later video. So asynchronous, when we talk about the advantages here, so one of the great advantages to doing things online is convenience, and a lot of students prefer to time it to do assignments, to watch videos at with their own agency. So they want to watch a video on the train on the way to work, or they're late night owls, they want to do things up late. So you can parse things out and let students do things at their own pace. Now, what this means for the design of things is you might want to chunk your content up into shorter, more manageable bits. So if a student wants to do something and then go do something else, rather than having to set an hour or 2 hours of time to sit down and do your coursework straight, that might be something you might want to design in, something you might want to have your students do to think about certain problems for long periods of time, and therefore you'll have to design that in, kind of emphasize to students you'll need 2 or 3 hours to actually focus on this particular issue. But most of the time, you're going to want to parse things out into concepts and ideas and give them out in between 5 and 15-minute chunks. So they can do a little bit, then they get distracted and come back and do a little bit more. Right? So students can be flexible with how they consume and make their schedules around the content. So when we got some disadvantages on the other side of that. So the flexibility of asynchronous means the rigid schedule of the synchronous might become an issue. So having a lot of students need to be online at the same time, there might be some technical issues. There could be some reason that internet stops working for some reason. And if you have some international students, time zones is usually a big interference of convenience of getting people all online at the same time, right? But if you're asynchronous, you lose that camaraderie of your fellow students. You might feel isolated, and this motivational feature of having to motivate yourself to take the initiative to watch that lecture, to do those assignments, instead of having a teacher right there in front of you or a student right there next to you, help motivate you to finish your work might become an issue. But in the design of the content of your e-learning, you can help mitigate a lot of these advantages and disadvantages. Hopefully we'll do that in a later video as well. But whatever happens with the online learning that you decide to embark on, this idea of synchronous versus asynchronous, you'll see if you're teaching online for the first time, will be a very important concept, and it's going to be a little bit different than how you think about it from traditional face-to-face teaching. All right. I think that's about it for now. I'll try and come back later with a couple more videos, and hopefully see you around next time. This is Eric signing off. Bye-bye now.